In the wake of the OceanGate tragedy, there's been a lot of questions asked about what potential liability OceanGate, the company that owned the vessel that imploded on the Atlantic seafloor, whether the owners of that company will suffer liability, either civil or criminal liability. We want to discuss today the civil liability, just whether or not the family members of the deceased passengers can sue the company for wrongful death. Criminal discussion is a different discussion for a different day. But Derek, there's a waiver in place here. Each one of these passengers, we've talked a lot about it, we've heard a lot about it, signed a waiver basically saying we give up any and all rights. We and our surviving family members in the event of our death, we give up all rights against OceanGate to sue them for financial, wrongs, wrongful death. In this case, we've got the waiver. Let's talk a little bit about what it says and then the impact of it.
Yeah, we got a copy of this waiver. You can see it on our website. This is what OceanGate would hand to the passengers who are about to take this excursion for $250,000. It's a pretty simple document, and we'll break it down for you. What it basically says is, here's this boat. This is a submersible that we have built. It's described as an experimental submersible that has not been approved or certified by any regulatory body and may be constructed of materials that have not been widely used in human-occupied submersibles. So basically, they're saying, this is a boat that we put together. We didn't get the government to put its stamp on it that it's safe or anything. This is a boat we put together with materials that we have, and there are risks associated with that.
It specifically says those risks could include damage to yourself up to and including death. And each one of the passengers signed this well in advance. And these are not people that just like sign at an amusement park like, I'm going to give them my rights. These are all extremely wealthy people who knew months in advance they were going to go on this boat.
Had access to lawyers to review this document.
Lawyers to review it. And they signed it, so you'd think maybe that's the end of the story.
Yeah, it's not really the end of the story. So they knew these risks. As you pointed out, death is all over this document. It says these risks cannot be eliminated. You may die during this voyage. And what they specifically released in the document is they assumed full responsibility for any death they might suffer.
The passengers did.
Yes, for any death. Even due to the negligence of OceanGate itself. So OceanGate is saying, look, this is risky. If you assume the responsibility, we'll take you down there for $250,000, but it's on you, and your family members, if you're to perish, can't sue us if things go wrong. Now, as a matter of contract law, people can sign documents, and they can, if they're sophisticated and they've been apprised of the risk, they can typically say, okay, I accept those risks.
Rights. I can't sue, and my family can't sue in the event of my death.
That's right. But there's an overlay of what's called public policy. Yeah. Sometimes we don't want people to be able to just sign any contract about any risk possible. And you want regulatory bodies to come in and say, whoa, we don't even want this industry to exist. And that's called a contract that would be unenforceable for reasons of public policy. What does that mean?
So
Jason?
I don't want to get too bogged down in this, but all 50 states have some, and this happened in the Bahamas. Bahamian law applies. We couldn't quite find anything specifically on point, but Bahamian law really does adopt a lot of U.S. law and UK law as well. And so basically the law is going to be that there are certain things that are so risky that, as you said, we don't even want businesses to engage in this conduct. And therefore, we're going to say, even if somebody signed a waiver, we're going to throw that waiver out as against public policy.
And what they're trying to do is deter people from starting businesses like this at all.
We talked about sort of the most extreme example. If I had a pit full of snakes, of poisonous snakes, I couldn't sign a contract that you're going to go into my pit of snakes and just sign it away as well. No,
even if you told me the snakes are deadly, you will die when you jump in the pit. You can't sign that contract. If you go in,
your family can still sue me for wrongful death because it's against public policy. You want to deter me from having my open snake pit. So that's what we're dealing with here is you have a situation that is inherently dangerous that and therefore, even though the passengers signed this document, the family members probably can still sue because it would be against public policy. And the courts are going to look to a lot of different things, whether or not it was, if the document was plain on its face, waiving all the liability. Number two, sort of, is it the kind of industry that you would expect to have regulation here? And
this is going to be a fascinating question because the submersible industry is sort of the Wild West. Now, there is something I looked up called the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration, which says if there's anyone going down to the Titanic wreckage, we have an interest in the integrity of the wreckage site, and we don't want people to damage it. But remember, OceanGate said, we just go down and look at it.
Yeah.
We're not looking to sort of touch it or anything like that. We take people down to look at the Titanic. So they said, that's not a regulation that applies to us. That's about disturbing the wreckage site. However, if this thing explodes and damages the wreckage site, you could see a regulatory body being like, well, if you're taking anything down there and it's a very fragile site, I want to regulate it. So now in the wake of this tragedy, you could see the NOAA, as they're called, try to step in and regulate this industry. But it'll take time. I think OceanGate would say this was unregulated and there was no way to get certification. It's not skydiving.
Right. But I think long and short of this thing is, despite the fact that these passengers all signed a waiver, there's a very good chance their family members could come after OceanGate and say, look, you got to pay us anyways.
Yep.